You can be talented, you can be consistent with your content, you could even be a great marketer. But if you miss this one crucial thing, it's like a house of cards that's going to come crashing down no matter what. You see, a lot of artists think that, okay, I'm burning out right now because I have to post a lot of content. But the truth is, there are artists who were making it. I'm sure you may have noticed a few of these people where they were starting to get some success. They were posting consistently, they were growing, and then they just kind of slowed down and then they stopped. What happened in those circumstances? Was it because they weren't capable and couldn't create content consistently? No. It's because they were burnt out. So if you can be burnt out with content, for example, even if you're having success with it or not having success with it, is content really the issue? But maybe something else underneath it. So the thing that's underneath all of that, that really undergirds our entire music business, is our why. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who has a great enough why can bear any how." And in this video, I want to help you align your purpose in this music business with your goals so that you can actually start to get some progress in your music business and stop just kind of kicking the mud and feeling frustrated all the time, because there's a lot of people in the music business that I feel like are struggling, sometimes simply because of the way that we're looking at things. There's a great guitar player named Steve Vai, and he has this perspective where he's like, none of this is work to me. He's like, my entire career with the guitar and the music business, he's like, it's not work, right? He's like, I've had a lot of challenges, but it's not work to me because it's all a joy. Because ultimately he gets to express himself through his music, right? And so one of the big reasons that artists are burning out is because they have this empty foundation. The foundation that's supposed to support why we're doing this is often forgotten because we're so focused on the daily tasks of what we need to do that we don't actually keep top of mind what's truly important. Why are you doing this? And for some musicians, it pains me to say this because this is a channel about becoming a music business professional. There's some people who will look deep down and say, like, I don't know if I'm really cut out to be a professional musician. But at least that's honest, right? At least that's something that's genuinely honest about that circumstance. But if you know that deep down you were meant to share your music on a wider level, you were meant to grow this, you were meant to have a bit of not a following for your own ego, but something that the music kind of can be this neutral third party. Soundgarden was at a round table one time, and it was Chris Cornell and the entire band. They were sitting around, they were talking about their music and legacy, and they described Soundgarden as a piece of clay. Like, Soundgarden was not one individual member, just like, and that statement rings true even if you're a solo artist, right? Because it's not the artist that makes the music necessarily. I mean, they physically make it, but what makes it, its being, its essence. The music is sort of this piece of clay that each of the members or the single member is like molding and creating into their own, little piece of art, right? So it's sort of separate from the person. And what they were talking about was this legacy of wanting to leave something that they had created that had impacted people and really left a mark on their lives. And I think if a lot of musicians dig deep down now about why they got into it, it's because not just that they wanted to share their music with people, but because they knew that the music that they had consumed had made an impact on their lives, and they wanted to make that same kind of impact on somebody else's life. Whether that was like going to a show and having a really great time, or listening to the music in a private, intimate setting, and really going in deep introspectively into the music. Like, everyone has these different ways that they are really trying to recreate an experience for somebody. And I think that's something we need to tap into more often. We need to tap more into that sort of why we're doing this. Why are we actually professional musicians? Are we doing it just for our ego? That's something that really we need to talk about. Like, the root cause of a lot of these issues is we're looking at things sometimes too, I mean this with all due respect, because I fall in the same category, so I'm not excluding myself. Artists oftentimes will look at things egocentrically. We'll look at things from like what we think is cool, because that's how we've created our art. When we create our art, it's very much a process of us going into our internal ear and asking, does that sound good? Is that cool, right? And whenever we start to do other creative aspects like music videos, we like to exercise that same kind of creative muscle in our brain. But when it comes down to your business, for example, your marketing, your website, your email list, things like that, that's where all of a sudden that kind of creative thing can become an issue here, right? Because we're starting to think now in terms of, oh, if I want to create something that's effective in business, I got to create something that I think is cool, and therefore people will like it, because that's what I did with the music. That's not the same realm. When you're in the creative realm, you're creating a music video, you're creating a song. That's the creative domain. But when you start getting into the marketing domain, now we have to think about how other people perceive things, right? So our job as a musician is not to puff up our own ego. Like, for example, if somebody goes to our website, I think one of the most useless things you could do is just have like a big photo of yourself, like that takes up the whole page, and you can only click like a couple of navigation buttons, and then there's nothing else that you can do. I think within the first scroll, you've got to give them something to do, because otherwise you're just puffing up like, look at this cool picture of me, and it just screams trying to make me look cool, as opposed to thinking from the perspective of, how can the fan have a better experience? What is the fan doing here? What would be something that would make their trip to my website easier and most efficient for them? But not just efficient for them, but effective for you and your music business, right? So that's the first thing. We need to understand that our job, being a professional musician, is to create art and music that resonates with us. But then once we start to market it, we start to figure out how we can package it in a way that other people will be like, whoa, I really want to check what's going on. Oh, that really resonates with me. Oh, that's so cool. Like, that's what we're trying to engineer in the marketing. And you can't do that from the perspective of, my job is to be, constantly making myself look cool and be in this, like, I'm just constantly aggrandizing myself kind of thing, right? And then there's another part of this too when it comes to our purpose as a musician, which is sometimes we limit exactly what we're trying to do. We don't think big enough, because we don't think that we can achieve big enough. And that's really one of the big issues, is we're sitting there thinking to ourselves, well, I don't know if I'm, qualified, or who am I to want to do X, Y, and Z. And we start having these thoughts where we downplay ourselves. And really that's going to come out in many different ways in your life. You can only repress that for so long before it projects itself out in some areas of your life. So you have to look at, am I really thinking as big as I want to? Sometimes we squander our thinking and we say, I don't want to think that big. Now, here's the thing. We have to discern thinking big from being unrealistic. Because what happens is, I've talked to certain musicians where I'll be like, okay, so like, what is your goal? What are you trying to do? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I want to make $20,000 a month. I'm like, oh, how soon are you wanting to do that? He's like, I don't know, like 3-6 months. Okay, wouldn't we all? Wouldn't that be fantastic? See, that's thinking big, but that's thinking unrealistically big, right? We need to think a little bit in more bite-sized chunks. I like to use an analogy when I communicate and coach people is, when you look at your goals, view them like a ladder, okay? Because if the next rung in the ladder that you use to climb is $20,000 a month, good luck getting to it. You're not going to be able to climb that ladder of success. But if your goal is, I want to get like $100 a month, $200 a month, $300 a month, then I think I can actually make it work, right? And I'm starting to grow, and I'm starting to show that I'm growing, right? That's sometimes all we need to get us going, and then the fire's cooking, because you're actually hitting like you're getting dopamine hits every time that happens, right? Every time you hit a milestone, a little dopamine hits, like, yeah, I got to that goal. Okay, what's the next one? And then you get to that, like, yeah, I got to the next one. And that's like a momentum driver. You don't get burnt out when you've got your goals planned out and you're hitting goal after goal after goal. That's going to be something that really helps you out a lot. So that's the thing, is think big, but then break the big into bite-sized chunks, little steps in the ladder that you can start to climb, right? Otherwise, you're not thinking big, you're being unrealistic, and we don't want to do that. So you have to think to yourself, what, and this is really getting into some like life design kind of stuff, what do I want my life to look like? Like, what do I want that to look like? When I'm visualizing, when I get up in the morning and it create art, engage with my family if you're married and have a kid perhaps, or maybe you're not, maybe you're single, but you think about what your ideal life would look like. And then you start to think, okay, that's how big I need to think. And then I just need to break that up into small chunks. And don't be concerned necessarily with timelines, like religiously. You don't do that. Some people are like, if I haven't gotten my 12-month goal, then I'm a failure. It's like, no. You just have to keep track of things and aim up. That's the thing, is you have to aim up. And that's really the whole point of me saying, are you thinking big enough about your goals? Is like, some people are not aiming up, they're aiming straight ahead. Or sometimes they're aiming down and they don't even know it, because they're so focused about what's going on in here that they actually don't notice that they're actually aiming down in their actions. So you have to aim upwards. All right. Now that we can like start to see I'm visualizing that I'm looking upwards. Now, what does that look like? Well, we have to understand you're not just a musician. You're not just someone who plays an instrument and makes music. You're a lot more than that. You're actually, I know this may be uncomfortable for some, but for others it might be kind of exciting to hear this for the first time and to now start to adapt this idea that you are in fact a leader in a lot of ways. And as Spider-Man, the classic Marvel comic, once said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I firmly believe that in the context of being a professional musician. Because a lot of people have, I'll just say it this way because it's honest, irrational emotional connections to us, having not known us as personally as you would usually have to know someone to have that kind of connection with them, right? So the fact is, we have to kind of uphold ourselves with a little bit more thought, because we ultimately have a responsibility. And some people are like, I don't want that weight. And here's the thing, you don't have to let the weight crumble you, because it all depends on what exactly your mission is. See, the art is what you do for fulfillment, and then it becomes the vehicle of transformation for somebody else, right? And so that's, me and my singer, we talk about this concept in our lyric writing and songwriting in general, which is the silver lining, which is like, it's okay to talk about the deep, dark things that happen to us in life, but when the listener's consuming it, you don't want that to become a song that becomes just a window of rumination. You want it to become something that even if they try to step into it because they initially feel some of those feelings, the lyrics can't help but leave them on the brighter side of that coin, right? So that's one thing that I ultimately think about a lot when I'm creating lyrics and creating music for my fans, is not that I need to like change what I originally wanted to do with the song, but to engineer my stories and concepts in such a way that no matter what we're talking about, there's still some kind of like value that can be derived from it, right? Whether it's just like a fun entertainment value that's derived from it, or like a cool introspective thought. Either way, it doesn't always have to be serious, but you get the idea. As a musician, you're getting people to have these emotional connections to you by the music you create, so you have to sort of wield that with great responsibility. And I say that not to make things burdensome, but to make things actually fulfilling, because it's very, very cool to be focused on purpose as opposed to validation, right? When you go and get likes and follows and comments that are like heart emoji or fire emoji, like, that's cool and all, that's validation. But purpose is when you get those YouTube comments where someone says, like, I was in a really rough spot in my life and I heard this song and it actually helped me cope with this pain that I was dealing with. So thank you so much. Like, imagine that feeling. I can tell you firsthand, that's what this is about. If music was really just about making music for us, we don't need an audience to do that, because we could just be an audience of one. But deep down, I think realistically, a lot of people just want their music to touch people in a good way. And so you're not just selling things, right? Whenever, like let's say you have a merch bundle or whatever, you're not just like selling things anymore. You're just taking these people apart. You're taking them along the ride to the mission. And what's the mission? To impact as many people as you possibly can with your music. Now, we understand that in the context of selling, and hopefully you now understand that to grow your music to the point where you can share it with multiple people and then, really make it a big thing that impacts people, you will require some funding. So selling will be pretty essential, but you don't have to do it in a way where you're begging. You're doing it in a way where you're setting up the story for your fans to be a part of this mission, right? But they can't be a part of the mission if you don't know what it is either, and you don't know how to clearly communicate that in a way that gets them to feel it and start to resonate with it. All right, so we have to look at not seeking validation from likes and views. We have to look at the purpose of why we became a musician. And so when we go to create our content, we're completely aligned with who that is. When we go to, create a merch bundle, we're completely aligned with who that is. Who is that person that you ultimately want to be when you're aiming up and looking at, like, this is what I got into this business for, is to be if we're being honest and people dropped any kind of like humility, but just really were honest about what they desired deep in their hearts and minds. They want to be in a position of influence so that they can make their fans' lives better with their music as the vehicle to do that, right? They want their music to be the vehicle that helps people get over trauma, cope with something that happened in their lives, think about something differently, maybe take action on a cause they believe in, or even if it's just have fun and escape from whatever's going on in the world, because God knows music can be great for that, and it is needed for a lot of the crazy things that happen out there. So I think it's something to look at, that mission of what you need to do with your music is a spectrum, right? On one side, it's complete escapism. There's not really a quote-unquote die-hard mission except for consume the music and just get lost in it so that you can escape from the world. All the way over to the far side of the opposite of that spectrum, which is we have a specific cause that we are trying to accomplish with this music. And so there's answers everywhere in between for you. You just got to figure out where you fall. Step into that role and start to live within that purpose, live within that why for the reason you actually became a musician, right? To impact people's lives for the better by sharing your art. But sometimes the sharing of the art isn't as simple as just giving someone a song to listen to. It's how we package it. It's how we market it. It's how we actually start to present our words. In business talk, they call this the copy. Like, what are the words that you say that get someone to go, what? And look at what you're trying to communicate, and actually, you hit them right where you need to, right? So if you'd like some one-on-one help with that marketing side, then click the link that's in the description. You can apply for a free one-on-one coaching call. We also have a free community that you can join in the description. This is going to be a great little community that we're building, kind of talking about some of the deep tactical stuff that goes on with being a music entrepreneur. So it's a community that's building right now. We've just got a little over 30 members that have got in now, so it's still early in the game before eventually I kind of close the doors and start charging potentially a small fee to get in. So good time to go join the free community if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that kind of good YouTube-y stuff, and I will see you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.